All right, welcome to the program on a Wednesday afternoon, and it is Wednesday. It is 12 noon. That can only mean one thing. It's Midweek with the Mayor.
Can only mean
Yay!
me. Yes.
We're on schedule.
Look at that.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah.
You know, we were on Friday last time, Barry, and it just threw me off for
And I think we've
days.
done a couple of Thursdays in there. I think it's probably only the second time in like a month or so that we've actually gotten it right.
We're all over the map.
Yeah.
We're all over the map.
So how you doing?
I am doing well.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. So I heard about your appearance on national TV. Do our listeners know about this?
Oh yeah, they know about it. Yeah. It's been everywhere.
So I haven't seen it. I saw the picture of you on there, and I was struck by the fact that you were wearing a sweatshirt that said Wyoming on it.
I know, and I have so many New Bedford shirts, but I didn't know when I left the house that I was going to be on TV. I didn't know till about 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon. They contacted me and said, "Can you come on at 3?" And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what am I going to do? I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Wyoming on it, and but I mean, it was cool. It worked out good.
Yeah.
And we represented. The call letters get up there, right? You know.
Oh yeah, right back there. As long as it says New Bedford. As long as it says New Bedford somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's good.
We were all over the. That's headline news.
Yeah.
That's the one that every airport shows.
Oh yeah.
When you're pumping gas.
Yeah.
You see it on the gas pump?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, New Bedford, we just put you on every gas pump in America.
I missed it this morning. I filled up on the mobile on Ashley Boulevard, which doesn't have the screens. So next time I fill up, I'll keep an eye out for it.
I'll give you a list of places that have the TV screens that do headline news. But it was an experience. It was fun.
Good. What's the name of the moderator?
Pereira is her last name, Michaela Pereira.
She's not from around here.
I don't know. I don't know where she's from originally.
Canada.
Canada. She's from Canada.
She's a Canadian Pereira.
A Canadian Pereira, yeah.
Not a New Bedford Pereira.
No.
Huh, okay.
But there's a connection between Canada and here. A lot of Portuguese
but
families.
There's a big Portuguese population in Ontario as well as Toronto. Yep.
And they come down here a lot for the festivals and that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So good experience then. All right.
Yeah. Good.
Nice.
Good time. Yeah. We'll talk more about that in the next hour.
Okay.
But in any event, we need our weekly ABC update from you. What's going on with ABC? And we're waiting for the judge to decide whether or not ABC must live up to its contract to pick up our recyclables, and if we heard anything from the judge yet.
We have not. We have told the judge that we are talking in earnest, and so I don't want to get into those details. All I can tell you is that we're moving with a sense of urgency. Our position remains the same. We have to, they need to honor the contract.
Who are you earnestly speaking with?
The two sides' respective attorneys are talking.
ABC?
Yeah, ABC in the city.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I didn't know whether you were talking like to another trash hauler or something.
No, well, no. I mean, we've certainly kept others in mind and have reached out to others just in case. I mean, that's so that we have that that card to play if we have to. We'd prefer not to, though. So
there's bargaining going on, we could say, right?
Yeah, although I mean, it's our position is our position. So we need to we need our trash hauler to honor the contract, and which should promise to pick up recycling at curbside all across the city. That's our position.
So your main gripe about all of this is they come to you and they say, hey, look, we're having a tough time with this, the Chinese, yada, 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 and we need more money. And you say, well, you got to show us the need for more money.
Yeah.
If they are able to come to the table and open their books and say, okay, Mayor, this is it. This is what we're losing as a result of this. Is it possible the city would be open?
A hypothetical, yes. Yeah. We haven't seen that yet. So
they still haven't shown the books.
They've shown us some financial information, but not nearly all of it for us to have confidence that this company cannot possibly abide by its obligations under the contract. And until we see that, then our position is, hey, a promise is a promise. Go pick up our recycling. And it's like, I mean, we're not being. Again, I mean, I have a lot of respect for the Camara family. They've been doing work in New Bedford for over 50 years. They're really great people. But, I've got an obligation to the residents of our city to make sure that they get the services they deserve and at the price they deserve.
Mm-hmm. So is it possible, though, hypothetical, that we could agree to actually give them more money if they can prove their case?
So you're asking me to do two different things that most elected officials will not do, which is A, answer a hypothetical, and B, comment on negotiations. And I won't do either one. No, but all I can say is that, look, we, I mean, as I said before, the overall approach is, there's a contract. It has to be complied with, and it's nothing personal. And, in the event that we can no longer do business with ABC Disposal, we're ready to go in another direction, though I would prefer not to do that.
All right. So no indication when the judge might have a decision?
No. And if the parties come to some agreement, some understanding ahead of time, then that would obviate the need for the judge to do anything. But we're not there at this point.
All right. So as far as you're concerned, the only agreement that they can possibly come to is pick up the recyclables, and
that's about right.
Yeah. And for no more money than what was agreed upon.
Right.
Okay. Where do we go from here? Somebody asked me to ask you about the Building 19 site. In fact, my wife did the other day. We were driving by. She said, when you're talking to the mayor this week,
I see her all the time. 19. Why doesn't she ask?
I don't know. Well, we were driving by it. She thought of it, and because it's funny. You look at Building 19, and I don't ever remember a point in my lifetime when you could have that vista, because the building has always been there, and you see a whole different view.
Those buildings
are
even older than you, Barry.
Even older than me. So we were talking about it, and she said, "Ask the mayor when you see him. What's going there?" So
okay.
What's
not sure yet. So the developer of that site, the owner of that site for a long, long time was Paul Bishens, and Paul's family has owned mills in the city going back, I think, to the 30s or so. His father, Harold Bishens, is actually, I think, 99 years old and lives in Florida. New Bedford native, very successful businessman. And he owns the mills, the former mills at the Building 19 site, as well as a number of mills in the north end and the south end. And Paul, in the last few years, seeing the city's progress, has started to put money into them and to redevelop them. And unfortunately, Paul passed away suddenly about 6 months ago. So some of those developments have slowed up as a result. His son, Andrew, has picked up the baton and is working on it. So he's working on sites up around North Front Street. Some of the two major mill complexes there are being worked on for residential development. There's the mill, the Kilburn Mill by one of the big mill buildings by the Kilburn Mills down on Grit Street that they're working on next to the Cove Walk. As well, and then there's the Building 19 site. He's got a few others as well around the city, but there's the Building 19 site. They foresee as a retail plaza, because when you think about Hathaway Road merging as it merges into Mount Pleasant, it's really right between two highway exits, right off of 140. Pretty easy access. It's near a pretty dense neighborhood. It's a big wide open site that actually has a rail spur right there. So it's a good site for a lot of different uses, but they're focusing on the possibility of big box retail. And so what they decided to do is, which is fine by me there. And so what they decided to do was to level the buildings and clean up the site. It had to be remediated. The old, I think it was the Continental Screw tank that got taken down. And Building 19 had painted a mural on that. That's come down. So the site is clear and therefore more marketable. And so I know they're talking to major retailers, and we'll see where that goes.
Boy, at a time when major retail is closing up all over the place, and plazas are lying dormant all over the place as well.
Yeah, well, they're not all closing up. So, the likes of, Macy's and Kmart Sears and other Sears have had to cut back pretty significantly. But some of the other ones are doing well. So we'll see. That in general is the plan. So it's left. I mean, he has a shovel-ready site there, and I know they are actively working on attracting some major retail there, and hopefully that'll pan out.
So are we talking about like one box store, or are we talking about a whole
I don't
plaza?
Know.
We don't know. This way?
I think they're open to different types of arrangements. What I'd like to see is whatever happens there is going to complement the neighborhood, to add to the tax base, and look decent. So that means that we'd like to see some design standards built into the construction so that it doesn't look like just any other strip mall.
Now, that would not be in any marijuana retail zone, right? Because that's too close to housing.
It could be. You know, we've been working on the marijuana ordinance. We've been talking to city councilors about it, primarily those on the cannabis committee, about where marijuana retail would go. So that site is a possibility, only because it's it is a little bit removed from neighborhood. It's not far away, obviously. There aren't too many places in the city that are far away, except like the industrial park. But that may be a possibility. But we're still trying to work out how that ordinance will work, and that'll emerge probably sometime in the next few weeks.
All right. So the that particular property, as you mentioned, was the Continental Screw prior to becoming Building 19. So that's a hazardous waste site, right? By definition, or a brownfield?
Not necessarily. I don't know. I think it has been remediated, and if it isn't remediated, it will be. You can't really redevelop it if it doesn't get remediated to a standard that is suitable for its intended purpose, namely retail.
Right, but that would limit. Obviously, you couldn't put housing there, right? I mean, because you had to wait.
Well, the house, a housing as a reuse requires the highest level of cleanup. Obviously, if people are going to be living in a site that had once been contaminated, you really have to clean it up effectively. Heavy industrial uses tend to have the lowest required level of decontamination. So retail is somewhere in between. I don't know whether they are completely done with remediation there. All I know is that they've done a significant amount of remediation, and that the intention of the developer, namely Andrew Bishens, is to get it as ready to build on as possible. So, if he hasn't finished remediation, I'm sure he will when he's ready to pull the trigger on it.
Has he given you any kind of time frame that he'd like to see everything done by over there? They have that thing.
No, I mean, look. This is a private. This is not owned by the city.
Right.
So.
But you guys like to keep tabs on that stuff, right?
Oh, we definitely keep tabs on it, and we certainly work with developers and want to be known as working effectively with developers. But at the end of the day, it's a private transaction between two businesses, and so once they have a sense of what they want to do, then we'll work hard to facilitate the permitting process so construction can get underway. But how long that takes is is anybody's guess. We think. I mean, the fact that they've sunk probably, I don't know, something north of $1 million to clean up that site is an indication that he thinks he's going to sell it to somebody, who's willing to build on it.
Yeah. Is that something you'd be willing to discuss a tax break for, a TIF?
We generally don't do TIFs, tax increment financing, for retail. It's been done in the past. It's generally not a good idea, and the state frowns upon it anyway. All the tax increment financing deals that we do as a city have to go through some layer of review at the state level, and state policy deeply discourages giving tax increment financing to retail establishments.
Would it be your druthers to see?
I mean, the town of Dartmouth did it a few years ago to some but to some criticism, right, for the Target on Route 6, right? So a lot of folks pushed back and said, hey, these guys were going to build here anyway. Why are you giving them a tax break? I'm not weighing in on either side there, but I'm saying that was a good example of, why retail doesn't, under Massachusetts policy, get that kind of preferential treatment.
Would it be your druthers to see a single box store go there, or a plaza, or does it really matter?
It has to work well with the city.
Do we get more money from a plaza situation where you got multiple businesses as opposed to one, or is it all?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I want it to work well for the neighborhood. I want it to work well for the city generally. I want people who come to the city. I want people in the neighborhood to feel like, that's good for my neighborhood, and I want people who come to the city to look at it and say, I like going there, and it looks good, and it's safe and clean, and all that. Those are our expectations.
But that would be an acceptable location for a marijuana retail facility, and in your
don't know yet. We're not ready to release all that yet. I mean, we again for marijuana, we're looking, Barry, at industrial zoned areas, and we want buffer zones from sensitive places like schools and daycare centers, and other things that people don't want marijuana dispensaries near.
So you expect some kind of an announcement within the next couple of weeks or so on what we come up with?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it takes. So right now we're under a moratorium that expires in September, and so our solicitor's office, as well as our our police chief, our health director, and a number of other folks in city government, have spent a lot of time figuring out. Our planning department have spent a lot of time figuring out how this will work, and we've had a fairly robust communication with the city council, especially Councilor Abreu and Councilor Giesta, and others, and we hope to get to a point soon where there can be something released for the public to comment on, for people to weigh in on and about how they feel about it, and then we can pass something that allows for the appropriate citing of those facilities and forbids the inappropriate citing of those facilities. That's the goal. Is
there some type of stumbling block at this moment that's holding up an agreement, or is it just a process?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's it is a complex undertaking, right? I mean, you're creating a zoning ordinance that covers the entire city, and it takes work, and it takes a lot of thought, it takes a lot of discussion, and the discussion with the city council has been very productive, and I don't foresee it being any different once it's released publicly.
All right, tell you what, I'm going to take a break because we got a lot of commercials to take in this set, so I want to do that and give you a chance to catch your breath and maybe take a couple of calls on the other side. Got a lot of other things to do. 508-996-0500 is the phone number. If you'd like to chat with the mayor on this Wednesday, we'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back to the program Midweek with the Mayor at 12:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. And we're going to pick up the conversation where we were just having a little conversation off air about the South End facility that the Bishons had and the mill building down there. And I was just asking the Mayor off air because we talked about the building on 19 site and the likelihood that that would go for some kind of retail development. And so I asked you about the South End building. We didn't get a chance to before the break. So, and your answer to me was?
I forgot. It was all of 2 minutes ago. What did you say?
So what are they looking at? Look at what are they looking to do with the
So-
South End factory building? And
Yeah,
where
so-
is it again? Where is it exactly?
Well, it's the Kilburn Mill Complex, right? So, where Furniture City is, and so there are lots of buildings in there. So if you travel down to along West Rodney French by the shopping plaza, and some folks out there will remember that plaza where Fernandes used to be, right before you get to the barrier gate and the beaches, right? That whole mill where New Bedford Antiques is.
Where Michael Bianco used to be.
Where Michael Bianco used to be, exactly.
Everybody knows that
Everybody
place.
knows. So, so there are basically there are lots of buildings back there, but there are two big mill buildings. There's the one that runs along West Rodney French that has all the loading docks that, are face out on the street. And then there's a building that runs perpendicularly with it like an L along Grit Street. And that's the one, if people are up on the Cove Walk, you see closest to the Cove Walk. So when we built the Cove Walk a couple of years ago, Paul Bishons, whose family has owned that building for decades, and who's kept it up very well, but hasn't developed it, kept it up in terms of, making sure the roof is okay and just, maintaining the buildings. He said, what, this is a place where we should invest now because, the Cove Walk adds value here. It's something that, is really good for the peninsula and for the whole South End. And we want to, start to sink private money into it. So he started to do that. So he's gotten, he's put a considerable amount of money into designing out a market rate housing development in there, no subsidies. And
which means no Section 8, no
affordable tax credits.
Right.
But he sees the value in having, a nice big mill building.
Explain what market rate housing is for the folks out there that might not be familiar with the term.
It's what the name implies, which is that they're housing units that don't have any kind of subsidy at all, right? So there are all sorts of housing subsidy programs that finance the construction or rehabilitation of housing, and they run the gamut from things from voucher programs like the so-called Section 8 program, which is funded by the federal government, to certain construction programs that include tax credits to the developer for building and maintaining housing that is affordable, that falls within a certain, whose income eligibility is capped at a certain level, so that they remain open to folks who are income eligible. In this case, there's none of that. It's all market rate housing, and it's market rate because of the improvements in that particular part of the city have led this one developer to say, look, I can sell these apartments now. They will be valuable to people and valuable enough that they'll pay a rent that is high enough to support my development cost, the cost of design and construction and everything else that goes into a big development like that. So that's all to the good. It's gotten held up a little bit because of, again, Paul Bishons died suddenly. His son Andrew has been working on it. It does require one particular subsidy that we've often used in New Bedford, and that is historic tax credits. There are both federal and state level historic tax credits that are used to fund the rehabilitation of historic buildings, historically valuable buildings. And so that he's using that, and sometimes that's a process that takes time. Those tax credits are awarded through the State Secretary of State's office, and so we're waiting. He's waiting on that. But my understanding is that once that happens, then he can go forward with what will be a really nice development right there.
Thing with market rate housing, because people oftentimes get it confused with affordable housing, and market rate housing generally is built with young families in mind, or young professionals in mind, or empty nesters.
Yeah.
That still have disposable income, And, you know, they are wired for all of today's technology and have gyms and all of these kind of things in them that are attractive, where three-deckers, old traditional three-deckers, are not so attractive to young families anymore. This is something that's attractive to people that can actually bring people in here.
Yeah, I mean,
with
I
an
think
income.
it's actually, I mean, yeah, so that's a possibility. I mean, there are others who are interested in that type of housing. So in this particular case, I think you'll see a lot of empty nesters who will like the idea of you're pointing at, you're in the market.
Oh
Yes.
my God, yeah, I want to get rid of my house so bad.
Yeah. Well, so here you
Kids are gone. I've got a three-bedroom house. Anybody want to buy a house?
So wait for this thing to get constructed, and then you can move in. It's, you know, you'll have these huge high-ceiling loft apartments with water views of Clark's Cove. You can walk to the beach, right? I'm sure once that's built, there'll be some coffee shops over there and stuff. So, you know, it's all it could be a really nice development.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, is there any time frame that he's thinking about in terms of getting that project?
I think you'll see that happen in the next couple of years. They're pretty far along in their work, and there's again, they have to secure some historic tax credits from the state. And again, that process sometimes takes longer than we prefer it to. But we've been through it before in New Bedford with mill rehabilitations and, you know, with things like, you know, some of our downtown developments, the new hotel and the old Standard Times building. So these things sometimes take a little bit of time.
All right. Not that long ago, we were talking about housing of another type, and that's housing that rental housing that we do see Section 8 and all of these different things. And we've had a lot of problems, and the council and your administration got together finally and passed some ordinances to clamp down on absentee landlords and all of that. How's that all working out?
Well, it was just passed, and I actually just signed it. Geez, I think it was yesterday. It came onto my desk.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So.
Well, you guys take a long time. Right? This was like weeks ago that we talked about this.
It requires, those ordinances require 2 readings of the full city council, and so it takes a little bit of time. You have to go through a committee and then the passage through 2 city council sittings. But they passed. I think it was if they weren't all unanimous, it was like 10-1. In the city council, and they're all good ordinances, and we've talked a little bit about them in the past. But you know, one of them makes it easier for a house to become designated a problem property, which allows the city to impose costs on landlords when people act up on the property. There's another one that forces landlords to clean up really messy properties faster. That's the clean and lien statute. It used to be that they had 14 days after they got notice. That's now been changed to 3 days, or 5, 3 or 5. I don't know why I'm forgetting, but that's another one. Then there's yet another one that requires landlords who don't occupy the building to post their contact information in a conspicuous place. Many of the tenements in the city are owned nominally by LLCs, limited liability companies, corporations that are effectively sort of, I don't want to call them fronts because there's nothing inherently illegal about them, but they do sort of veil the real ownership of the building. And so sometimes it's very hard for tenants to track down, and hard for the city to track down the real owners of the property. So what we're saying now is if you own an LLC, you got to put your name up there.
What percentage? Is it a big percentage?
It's a big percent. I don't know exactly what it is. It's a big percentage. I mean, think about it. I mean, in 2008, we had all those foreclosures like a lot of other American cities. And from 2007 through 2009, especially, lots of vacancies. And then there were a lot of folks who had cash, landlords who had cash, and they poured cash into auctions of many tenements in the city and bought them up, one by one. A lot of times they would, some of the local banks and some of the national banks would allow them to take out large home equity loans in which they just basically pulled cash out of the building and bought up the next house at auction, and they rolled it over again and again and again so that they could ultimately finance the acquisition of lots and lots of properties. So there are a handful of landlords in the city who own an awful lot of tenements, and there's 1 or 2 that own over 100, and there are others that own dozens of them. And the middle tenements in the city were not designed for multiple ownership. In other words, by that I mean for having one person own many of them. They were designed, as we've discussed before, to have one family own it, and then relatives live on the second and third floor. We're all familiar with that arrangement. And, that arrangement, however, is really in the minority these days. And so that's why, we look at neighborhoods like along North Front Street, around Rue Street, where we have lots of tenements, and they're not as stable as they used to be, in part because the people who own the places, who would otherwise keep them up well if they live there, don't live there.
They're like warehouses.
Yeah. So, that's why that's why we've ramped up with all these ordinances, and we've ramped up with the task force, and we fine and we enforce and enforce and enforce, because those neighborhoods are not as self-regulating as they used to be. It isn't.
So is this majority, would you say, of three-deckers in the city that are owned by these LLCs?
Yeah, if I had to guess, is it more than half? Yeah. Sure.
Overwhelming majority? I'm trying to gauge.
Say it's 65%? Is it 68%?
Trying to get a sense of what we're talking about here, because I hadn't really wrapped my brain around that.
It's definitely more than half. No, I mean, that's been the big change in housing in New Bedford in the last 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
It's the sharp decline in home ownership in particular neighborhoods, and that's why we spend, and lots of other, challenges arise as a result of the instability in those neighborhoods. It's the places where we pick up lots of trash, where we spend a lot of time putting police officers. It's the place where there are the most fires, and it's for reasons that everybody gets. If you own your own home, if you own the home you live in, you would tend to take care of it better. And
sure.
The converse is true. If you don't live there, you're probably not going to.
I knew it was a problem.
Money.
I just didn't. I guess I just didn't grasp the scope of the problem, and I wonder how many people.
So when I say these neighborhoods are not as self-regulating as they used to be, that's the case, right? It isn't. The parents who are Vavu and Vavor living up on, or Babcha and Jaju, or pick your ethnic group, Meme and Pepe living up on the third floor anymore and watching out for the kids in the neighborhood while the parents are away working. Those arrangements aren't as prevalent as they used to be, and so there has been some more disorder, and that's where government has to step into the void, and that's why we beef up code enforcement, we beef up law enforcement, and we do more fire prevention. I mean, you have to do it. That's just the way it is in those neighborhoods. And it's not to write them off. It's just it's just an acknowledgement of a different reality. So we, on the same time, on the positive side, we do encourage home ownership, and there are young couples who look at some of our tenements as starter homes, because if you can fill the second and third floor, that can help you pay the mortgage, right? So as we all know, and so we try to encourage that through some of our programs. Then you get stuck with
crappy tenants and stuff to get them out.
Well, you have to be selective, right?
Yeah,
we all know
that. It opens a whole new can of
you
issues.
have to be selective about the people you let in.
Yeah. So you signed the ordinances yesterday. Do we immediately do a rollout on this and get into these neighborhoods and start policing them?
Well, we do more of the same. It's going to become easier for us to do more, to be, we can be more effective at it. That's what these things are geared toward. We can track down landlords more easily now. We can force people to clean up their sloppy properties faster, right? If garbage is piling up in a particular area, we can say, we're serving you. You've got 3 days to clean it up. If you don't, we're going to do it. We're going to slap you with an administrative fee, and then we're going to put it on your tax bill. Boom. So there's that. That gives us some leverage. And when it comes to problem properties, look, if people are acting up and the police continue to go to your house, well, sooner or later we're going to send you the bill for that as well.
So summer's rolling in, and hopefully it'll get here one day. But already we're seeing people are out later into the evening, and
you kidding me? You see this rain, Barry?
Oh man,
it's been miserable.
Stay in the house
it was
and
50 degrees, and 2 days ago, wasn't it 50 degrees? And it's June.
I know, it's unbelievable.
We're gonna start seeing icebergs float by.
So I actually put the heat on 2 days ago to take the chill out of the house. It was cold. Yeah, John's shaking his head over there.
No, I put a sweatshirt on Monday. I'm like, wait, what's the date? I like to look at the calendar.
Yeah. So a couple of shootings on Holly Street, which four gunshots fired the other night somewhere, and I mean, so I mean, it's starting to heat up.
Well, I wouldn't infer too much. I mean, we do. There's no doubt that when the season heats up, that we tend to have more incidents like that. In that particular case, I mean, the guys were caught pretty quickly by the police. They, with the help of neighbors, which is great. I mean, people spoke up, and we encourage people to do that because it definitely helps the police. But no, I mean, things are in a very different place this year than they were last year for sure.
All right, let me take the second break. 508-996-0500. We'll get to your calls right after the break with the mayor on 1420 WBSM. All right, welcome back to the program. It is Midweek with the mayor. We got about 12 minutes left until the top of the hour, so let's get to your calls right now. And you are first on the air on 1420 with Mayor Jon Mitchell. Go ahead.
Well, it's good to talk with you there, Barry.
Hey, what's up, buddy? Haven't heard from you in a while.
Well, I had a bike accident last month, and I'm in rehab right now.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't know about that at all. How you doing, Al?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Who the heck's running the South End while you're laid up?
Yep, unfortunately.
Yeah, gee.
The good mayor there?
You sitting right here?
I am. I saw Al last night at the Bay Sox game, and I'm glad you're looking good. I'm glad to see you're on the mend.
Yes, I am. I have something for you to look into for me.
You bet.
I have the business card for the CERTA bus, but I've been getting stonewalled as far as trying to talk to a human being. But perhaps with your
They
help,
still employ human beings.
yeah, I know. But the idea is they failed to connect me with one.
Uh-oh.
So this is why I'm calling you, the man in charge of the city, to see if you can change the timing for route number 6. Every 40 minutes there's a bus. Every other line is 20 minutes per bus. See what you can do about changing that from 40 to 20.
Okay.
That's sort of bus. Because I want to tell you, I was getting stonewalled and not getting any results. So the only next best thing is talking to you,
Okay.
the man in charge.
All right. So we can follow up with CERTA about that.
Please, I appreciate that. I'm actually.
I mean, I can't give you any guarantee, Al, but we certainly will check into it for you.
I
Get
appreciate
you an
it,
answer
I
either way.
am advocating for the people here.
Yeah, you bet.
All
Nice
right,
work.
you take care of yourself and get yourself better, all right? Sorry to hear about your accident. I hadn't heard about that. I knew I hadn't heard about from Al in a while. In fact, I was just thinking about it the other day. I said, gee, where's Al? I haven't heard about Al.
And there he is. Yeah, no, I saw him last night, and it was good to see him. He got into a bad accident, but he looks well.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so PACA picking up a state grant, $28,000 for the opioid.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, PACA, if the folks at PACA work hard, and they do a good job, for sure. And we'll take the money. I mean, it's not a huge grant, obviously, $28,000 in the big scheme of things, but we'll take it and make work with PACA to make the most of it. We work very closely with them and a number of the other providers to stem what is, as I've said before, the most vexing of public health problems, which is the opioid problem. And we're making progress, and every little contribution helps.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. The last time we actually spoke about it, the news was getting better. The actual number of people who are dying from opioid overdoses had declined. Well, I think you said the actual number of overdoses had increased, but the actual number of deaths from overdoses had decreased.
Yeah, the number of deaths went down from 2016 to 2017 to about 20%. Yeah, 19%, I think it was. Yeah, so which is good, but there's still there were still too many. I think it was like 44, right? So which is awful, right? So we'd like to get that number down to 0. That's what we'd like to do, but and we're working to get it much lower this year, and then more the next year, and keep at it. I think over time, I had an interview the other day with a reporter from the Washington Times. They were doing a story on
good conservative paper. Yeah.
Yeah, it really didn't have a political bent at all, but it was more about opioids and efforts to interdict fentanyl, the supply of fentanyl, and the focus was on the task force that's situated in the DEA office in New Bedford. The Drug Enforcement Administration has a small office in the city whose area of enforcement, whose area of responsibility stretches from basically Rhode Island down the Cape, and but the Cape in particular has had as much as we've had a tough time in Greater New Bedford, it's been even worse in the Cape, and so the Trump administration's poured some resources into it, and I think those guys are working hard and making a difference, but and that's what this reporter called up about. But he asked, if is there anything that you think would make a real big difference in the long run? And I said, I still think that our state, and especially other states, have to do more to curb the prescribing of opioids. I mean, heroin's been around for a long time,
right.
And what's been different in the experience of so many places around the country, including New Bedford, over the last 10 years or so with respect to addiction has been how people get there. It's been through more than ever before through legally prescribed medication, and government can certainly play a role in curtailing the risk that somebody can get hooked just by, taking, painkillers.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more work to happen there. But that's one of the things that I mentioned to him. If there's any one thing that can be done, it's more curbs on prescribing.
All right, let me take the last break. We'll come right back. We'll have a couple of moments if you'd like to weigh in. 508-996-0500. We'll be right back after this. All right, we are back with about a minute or so to go with Mayor Jon Mitchell. A quiet day today. You must have filled all the potholes, right?
Yeah, go figure. I mean, we've been looking at the phone lines and scratching our heads, but at least Big Al called.
Al called and checked in, and we know he's okay. So we've got a couple of graduations this week.
Yeah, New Bedford's two biggest graduations. Tomorrow night is New Bedford High School's graduation, and Friday night is Voc Tech's graduation. We hope we're hoping for great weather on both nights. I think it's got to be better than this, Barry. But I want to just congratulate all of the high school graduates in the city and wish them well. And it's always wonderful for me to get a chance to be part of.
So are you like the keynote speaker for some of these things, or?
I am at New Bedford High at Voc Tech. Unfortunately, this year, it rotates at Voc Tech among the three communities: Fairhaven, Dartmouth, and New Bedford. So I'm not up this year, and unfortunately this year I'm not going to be able to attend because I have U.S. Conference of Mayors meetings up in Boston. That's where the summer conference is being held. It's being held in Boston this year, so I had some long-standing obligation to attend that.
All right, we got to wrap it up. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah. So have a good weekend.
All right, you as well, and we'll mention these other things too throughout the afternoon.
Sounds good.
Get posted here. But all right, Mayor Mitchell, we're back on the other side of the news. Stay with us. You're listening to 1420 WBSM.